AITA for insisting that my brother and his girlfriend not wear gross clothes in my car. I, 28F, have a very sensitive nose. I can't do perfume. I tell guys not to wear cologne on a date. I can't be around cigarette or pot smoke or I start gagging. My whole family knows this and for the most part are very supportive. This weekend, my brother, 24M, called me up at 2 a.m. because he and his girlfriend, 22F, had missed the last train out of the city because they met up with some people at a bar and wound up going back to their place for a bit. He asked me to come get him. My apartment is 40 minutes outside the city and our parents, who he lives with, are about an hour away. I told him to get an Uber because if they reeked of alcohol, cigarettes, and weed, I didn't want them in my car. He said it would be too expensive, promised they didn't smell, and begged me to come. I told him that as long as they didn't smell, I would come get him, but that I was prepared to leave him if he did. I got to the address about an hour later. They came out and it was clear they were both drunk. My brother went to hug me and I could immediately smell weed on him. I started retching, told him it wasn't going to work, and to call Uber. We showered. "There's no way you're smelling anything, it's all in your head," he said to me. Apparently their solution was to shower in these people's apartment, thinking that would get rid of the tobacco and weed smell on their clothes. I told them to call an Uber and got back into my car. He banged on the window. I told him that he wasn't getting in my car like that. I told him I'd give him half the money for an Uber and I was leaving. He told me to just roll the windows down. I told him that I didn't want it in my car. He said, "I showered. These are the only clothes I have. I can't ride home naked." That gave me an idea. I opened my trunk, grabbed 2 blankets and 2 trash bags. I told them to put their clothes in the bags and cover up with the blankets. His girlfriend handed it back and said, "Fuck that, I'll walk," and walked away. My brother told me I was out of my mind and it was all in my head. I reached in my wallet, pulled out $50 and said to call Uber. He handed it back, told me to hold up, and ran after his girlfriend. They came back and he asked if they could sit in the back with the windows open. I told him I wouldn't be able to stand it for an hour, so they begrudgingly stripped, put their clothes in the bags, and I tied them off and threw them in the trunk. I drove them to our parents' house in silence and dropped them off without a thank you. My brother's girlfriend unfriended me on Facebook. He and she are not speaking. And my mom is furious with me saying that I embarrassed them and I was being overly sensitive. She says I should have called her so she could have gotten them. My mom goes to bed at 9, so I don't think she would have been thrilled. I feel bad that I put that condition on it, but I would not have been able to tolerate being in my car otherwise. Edit. I've been asked to add some info into my post that I answered in comments. My reaction to smell is very extreme. I retch, I gag, I throw up, my eyes water, my stomach churns, I get migraines, my heart races, I get chills that make everything else worse. I could not have driven home with that stench in my car. We would not have been safe. Everyone who is voting that I'm the asshole seems to think I forced this girl to take off her clothes to punish or humiliate her. There was no part of me that enjoyed asking my brother to give up his clothes to get in my car. I had no smile on my face, and I apologized to them for being so sensitive to smell. I pushed for the Uber. I even offered to cover most of it. It would have been $65 for them to get home. They didn't want to get in an Uber when they were in that condition. I was embarrassed to ask them to strip, but there was not a way for me to make it an hour with them in the car in those clothes. I did not tell them to get naked. I told them to put their clothes in the bag. They went behind the car. I had my back to them and was keeping my distance. My brother handed me the bags and I tied them up and threw them in the trunk without inspecting them. The blankets were a good size, so all you could really see is that both were barefoot and had removed their shirts and pants. I do not know if they left their underwear on or were naked under there. Any intimate bits were covered. Superintendent, 62. Well, they wouldn't accept her answer. Call an Uber, which they should have done in the first place, instead of roasting her out of bed at 2 a.m. and requiring her to drive for an hour and a half. It's too expensive, they whined. What? Is Op's time worth nothing? She should have told them one last time to get a goddamn Uber and then turned her phone off. Certified proctologist, 25. It sounds like Op made things a lot harder for herself and everyone involved. If she knew they were at a bar, then she knew the smell would be on their clothes before she made the trip. Why drive all that way if she knew this likely wouldn't work out? Then offering for everyone to get naked. She should have just said no to the ride rather than waste her and everyone's time by driving out to a situation she basically knew wasn't going to work. Talk about trauma. Op tried giving them $50 to not get in her car. If anyone is an asshole, it's the brother for insisting. Op never pressured them to undress. The brother is the one that insisted it had to be Op taking them home. I assume without getting gas money either. Op stated that the only way they could ride in her car is if the smell that was literally making her retch and throw up was dealt with. The only way to deal with the smell was bagging up the clothes. What would you have had Op do? Offer $50 to them and ask them to take an Uber? Oh wait, Op did that. Tell them they can't ride in her car and leave? Op tried that. The only thing Op didn't try was driving while incredibly nauseous and throwing up, which is not a situation one should be driving in. Waking your sister up in the middle of the night to come get you because you were partying too hard to catch the train and don't want to pay for Uber is a lot more rude. And he knew she had sensory issues, and she even offered him $50 towards the cost of an Uber. The girlfriend should be pissed at her boyfriend, but Op was not in the wrong. She could not safely drive the car or even ride in it unless they removed their clothes, or simply never got in the car to begin with. I honestly wouldn't have driven out to get them at all. Asshole enthusiast, 6. How was she pressured? Op was gonna pay for most of the cost of an Uber. They could have taken that. GF is a grown woman who can do what she wants, just like the brother is a grown dude who knows how sensitive his sister is around smells, and definitely knew better. In all of that, how is Op, the one that drove an hour to get her lying brother and his girlfriend and then found a way to make it work, in any way the asshole? You're the top comment, so yours is the only one that's gonna count for the bot. I have severe respiratory issues. I will deal with quite a bit in public with adaptations. I've been wearing a mask in the US since way before it was cool to attend festivals, bars, and outdoor events, and I also have a portable oxygen concentrator. But I absolutely refuse to allow anyone to contaminate my spaces that I pay for where I spend the bulk of my time. That means no smokers in my car ever. No matter what, I will happily wait with someone wherever we are until a ride gets there, but they're not welcome in my vehicle. I won't even allow guests at my house to go off my property to vape and smoke and then return because airing out isn't effective and smokers need to stop being in denial about it. I bring their belongings to them at the door and thank them for their visit. That's not being a lot or not acting like an adult. That is setting boundaries. I don't have to deal with anything in my home that I own from anyone. They can find alternate arrangements, period. I don't understand the concept of being like I have the same issue and can deal, so this person should be able to as well, and completely ignore that people have varying degrees of illnesses. If you can deal, pat yourself on the back and be happy about it, but don't chastise someone for an experience that you don't have. Also, you're not operating heavy machinery while changing your baby's diaper. Superintendent, 67, how because you should have just said no in the first place if you knew there was a very good chance you'd strand them anyway. And making someone's trip to get in your car is just disgusting and violating. I don't blame that poor girl for not wanting anything to do with either of you anymore lol. The smell of bare ass on your blankets isn't as gross as smoke to you? Superintendent, 63. She's not an asshole for being dumb or for being gullible. This isn't the IG or AITA. She acted in good faith and they tried to pressure her into doing something that could have caused her to crash the car. She offered them an Uber, and they didn't want it. She tried really hard to accommodate them without breaking her own personal boundaries. It's easy to say you shouldn't have even driven there, but she was doing it to be kind. The brother was an asshole for taking advantage of that. Asshole aficionado, 12. I can't believe how far I had to scroll to find this. What in the world? Question mark. Op got her ass out of bed at 2 a.m. and drove 40 minutes to pick up her lying-ass brother and his cheap-ass girlfriend. They should have known that showering and putting on the same stinky clothes was not going to solve the problem. They could have just gotten an Uber and been home without any showering, waiting, fighting. I think Op was too nice to even give them a chance by driving out there, but not remotely in awe for it. She wanted to help. She tried to help in various ways, offering several solutions. She shouldn't have to drive for an hour with the windows rolled down just to not hurl in her own car. And who knows how long the smell would have lingered, at least by her own noticing, since she's that sensitive. Why should she have to compromise her health and comfort for these freeloaders? Seriously, I can't believe the other people in this thread. You gave so many options. Your brother and his girlfriend suck. I have this problem with my bum-ass brother who's a smoker. I can't tell you how many fights we've gotten into because I insist he changes out of his clothes that smell like smoke before getting in the car I drive. Shared family vehicles, 4 adults, 3 cars. Idiot doesn't listen, and now every time it's hot my car reeks like cigarette smoke, and I swear he's smoked in the car because the first couple seconds of AC stink too. It never gets out. Grapton, 198, ESH. Your brother knows you and should have just ponied up for an Uber or not missed the train or not gone into the city at all if he was low on cash. There are so many ways that could have prevented this. Even calling you at 2 a.m. for a ride when you're 40 minutes away is a no-move. But demanding people ride naked in your car is just too much. I can see how the GF felt. She had no choice at the time and, once she sobered up, felt pretty violated. Surely you are in situations in public that you cannot control where you just have to grin and bear it sometimes. Here, these people had showered and were willing to ride with the windows down. That should have been enough. But demanding people ride naked in your car is just too much. But she did not demand they ride naked in her car. She said bad smells that make her physically ill and unsafe to drive are not allowed in her car. This is an important distinction. Op did not try to coerce them to get into her car naked. She was trying to solve the problem of getting 2 stubborn drunks home safely without compromising her health and safety at the same time. She offered multiple other options, and when they refused, she figured out a way around the no bad smell in-car barrier by saying, well, you can contain the item saturated in bad smell in the trunk, and I will drive you. She bent over backwards to help them, and she didn't force them to be nude. Presumably they kept on their underwear and she had blankets for them. Professor Emeritus, 70. I have asthma to smokers. I can't have them in the same car as me even with windows open, otherwise I'll vomit from the cough variant asthma at best, and I'll go to the at worst. I have literally coughed until I puked after walking past a neighbor's door in the stairway even with the window open right next to their door. Op was clearly on the verge of vomiting even when not in the same car. There's no way she could have driven safely. Doesn't matter if it's a medical issue like my asthma, a sensitive nose like the Op, or even if it's entirely psychosomatic, she can't drive them safely. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Making them strip. Op didn't make them do anything. 1. She is literally doing them a favor. They made irresponsible choices that caused them to miss their train. 2. Op offered to pay for most of their Uber. After already spending her time and gas to drive out there, this is not an asshole move. Op had no obligation to do this. These are 2 grown-ass adults we're talking about here. 3. They decided they were more comfortable with stripping than taking an Uber. 4. They also could have called anyone else at any point in time. Op's mom even said she would have come and picked them up. She didn't make them strip. She was very clear with him that if she arrived and they smelled at all, she was prepared to leave him. He could always call Uber, and when she got there, she didn't just leave, despite the fact he had been warned she was ready to do it. She instead offered 2 options: strip and use the blankets or get an Uber, and she offered $50 to help cover it. So Op is anti-A. The brother, on the other hand, needs to grow up and stop being an entitled mooch. Participant 3, Anti-A. Sensory issues aside, it's your car. They don't have to deal with the lingering smell that will have to be taken care of after. And I think we all know they won't do anything to make that up to you. It's no different from people asking others to take off their shoes when they visit. Now, factoring in those sensory problems of yours, your brother and his GF are even bigger odds because they already know you are very sensitive and they were hanging out in a place that reeked heavily of smoke and alcohol. The fact that you even agreed to help them in the first place should have meant that they were willing to do your every bidding. Participant 1. ESH. Your mom was right, you should have just called her. Instead you embarrassed and demeaned your brother and his girlfriend in public. That is never going to go over well. As someone myself who has sensory issues, mine literally send me into an asthma-like attack where perfumes is concerned. I can empathize with you, but only to a point. Making any person, especially a female, strip on a public street for a ride home is never acceptable. You at the very least owe your brother's GF an apology for that behavior, and hopefully in the future no one will ever call you for help in a similar situation. She didn't make the girl strip. She told her brother she was prepared to leave them there if she got there and they smelled. Every idiot knows that pot and cigarette smoke sinks into clothing. She then offered them two choices. Despite having warned her brother she would just leave them if they smelled, the strip and use blankets option, or the Uber option, which she was willing to contribute $50 to the cost. I'd never have agreed to come get him in the first place. He can call mommy himself, or pay for his own Uber. The brother embarrassed and demeaned himself, and if anyone pressured, no one forced, the girl to strip. It was the brother. He should have accepted the $50 with the promise to repay it ASAP. Better yet, he should have called Uber and paid for it himself in the first place and not have called his sister at all. Asshole aficionado. 12. Anti-A. And I'm aghast at so many people calling you tough for this. I mean, was it ideal for them to have to strip and wrap up in blankets for the ride home? But it was the best you could do in the moment. You went well out of your way to help these two grown-ass people. Maybe a different story if this was a teenage sibling, and offered several options. If GF didn't like being pressured to undress her grievances with her BF, your brother not you, he decided for them that they'd accept your offer. I mean, no great loss on the unfriending IMO. So that's whatever. But no, you did way more than you had to do to help these irresponsible clowns. Anti-A. It's your car. You are doing them a favor, and you made them fully aware of the possibility that you would not be able to handle it. You also gave them other options even when you didn't feel comfortable taking them as they were. Although I don't have sensory issues, I understand how much sense can linger in cars and do not blame you one bit for your decision. Although maybe next time if you are aware of this situation you can bring some spare clothes of your brother's for them to wear rather than just blankets. Participant 1. Anti-A. People who do not have the sensory issue do not understand how truly debilitating this can be. When I am around certain smells, especially certain strong perfumes, I have an instant migraine. Not just a headache, but a migraine. Cigarette smoke in enclosed areas is almost as bad, and it is not something I can control. There is something about these odors that sets my system off immediately. Your family knows this about you. Your brother and his girlfriend wanted to be cheap and get a free ride home, and they both knew what they'd been up to that night. Anybody who has been around somebody who's been smoking a lot of weed and cigarettes knows exactly how those smells were clinging to your clothes. The fact that they showered meant absolutely nothing, and they knew it. You told him up front that if they smelled, you could not give them a ride home and it would probably be best to just Uber home. You even tried to pay part toward an Uber. And what your mom and some of those other people don't seem to understand is that your reactions are absolutely involuntary. If you already started retching just from a hug, I can only imagine that by the end of an hour, you probably would be throwing up. And as most of us know, when somebody in the car starts throwing up, it usually causes a chain reaction, and doubly so when somebody is drunk and high. So this really could have had a god-awful ending, you gave them an option that worked so that they could get what they wanted, a free ride home, and you could get what you needed, not to be sick. And it all happened because they were stupid and cheap. If girlfriend doesn't want to be embarrassed, then maybe she and your brother could actually act like adults and figure out how they're going to get home before they go on another bender. They are not your circus, and they are not your monkeys. If your mother keeps up with this, tell her next time they can call her, and she can feel free to go get their sorry drunk and high asses.